It's been a few days since I painted the chassis, so the time has come to put all of this back together. I think the paint job turned out quite nicely, certainly better than the old rusty metal that was there. I also painted up the bottom plate on the transformer, and I've done the sides previously, and I also cleaned off the rust and painted the sides of the transformer. So time to put that part back together too. But before I remount the transformer and put all this other stuff on, I want to check these coils. It just so happens there's somebody restoring a Philco 60 and posting on the anti-radio forum, and he's having trouble with these coils. I think in particular the oscillator coil. So somebody else is trying to help him out and posted some diagrams of how these coils are wound and how they should measure on an ohm meter, because I guess these have a reputation for coming open, like I guess the wires can break or they burn out. So while I've got these open and exposed, I think it'd be a good idea to check them now, and if there are any breaks, well, hopefully I can repair them without too much trouble. But I have some guys go to the length of actually rewinding these entire things from scratch, so it is possible. I'll keep my fingers crossed I don't have to do that though, because I really don't want to have to. The black enamel paint on the transformer has had plenty of time to cure, so I'm putting it back together. It consists of several pieces. There's a bottom plate, there are two side plates, then there's of course the inside of the transformer itself, and then there are two brass nuts and bolts that hold it together. The side plates fit through some slots in the bottom plate, and they need to be bent over. I'll end up knocking some of the paint off. In fact, I already have a little bit, but this is on the bottom, so it won't be too noticeable, and I think I'll just touch it up with a paintbrush afterwards anyway, so it won't rust. And finally, I'll polish these up a little bit before I put them on. And here it is, reassembled. Not too shabby, I think. Now it's just a matter of remounting this on the chassis. Leads feed through the bottom, and then there's 4 bolts that feed through the holes there. And then, of course, I'll wire it back up. I figure it's about time I took a closer look at the speaker, so I went out to the cabinet and removed it, put it up here on the workbench. This is what they call a field coil type speaker, as opposed to a permanent magnet speaker. The permanent magnet's clearly visible here. It's that black ring, and you can see a screwdriver sticks right to it. Whereas this has a field coil, or an electromagnet. That's what this big coil here is. That field coil serves 2 purposes. 1, it creates a magnetic field which the speaker needs to operate. 2, it actually serves to filter the DC power for the radio. So here's the output of the 80 rectifier. Goes to a capacitor, and then over to this field coil. Then the other side comes back to another capacitor. That forms a pi filter, which filters out the hum. And then there's an output transformer. Goes to the 42 output tube, and then this 400 ohm coil here. Then that ties into the same point here on the field coil, which is why there's only 3 wires going to this. Some have 4. Some have 2 separate leads for the field coil, and then 2 leads for the output transformer. But in this case, there's 1 common, so just need 3 wires. Now the other side of that output transformer goes to what they call a voice coil. And that's the coil of wire that's inside that magnetic field, and that's what moves the cone up and down. So the speaker looked okay from the back. However, when I turned it over, not so much from the front. The cone itself doesn't have any tears in it, but the surround, I'm not sure what this is. This might have been, it doesn't look like the cone's damaged. I don't know if this is some kind of old repair attempt, or if there was some kind of gasket that kind of like melted over time or whatnot, but it doesn't seem to be doing any harm, and the cone's in good shape, except for this like hole down in there. I'm not sure how that happened or what it's all about, but there's kind of a jab there. Now I can probably just glue that back together, but before I get into that, let's actually test the speaker and make sure that the field coil, voice coil, and output transformer are all good. So to do that, I will grab an ohm meter. I'll remove the back cover to make it easier to see how the wiring is hooked up. Underneath that cover is the audio output transformer. It was fairly common on 30s radios to mount this output transformer right onto the radio itself. Sometimes on the chassis, especially for larger output transformers, but in this case it's right on the speaker. So I found that this wire here, going to this point, goes to both the primary of the output transformer and the field coil, so that has got to be this white here. The colors on these wires are so faded I really can't tell green from white from green and white, so that's why I wanted to trace out the wiring. Now for the other connections, well, this is the field coil here. Not that one, this one. And I am getting 1,145 ohms, and it's supposed to measure 1,140, so you can't beat that. Now for the output transformer, this is the other side of the primary, and I'm getting 433 ohms, and they say 400 on the schematic, but that's close enough. It's certainly not open and it's not shorted, so that's good. Which leaves the output of the audio transformer and the voice coil. Now they're connected in parallel, so if I measure this resistance, it's really not going to tell me much if I get a value, because they're in parallel like that. But what the heck, let's see what we get. Should be this guy here, and this guy here. Okay, yeah, it's measuring almost 0, and that's because it's 0.01 ohms in parallel with 0.89 ohms, so to really measure that properly, I'm going to have to sever this link between the two. So I'll grab my soldering iron and carefully unsolder one of these connections so I can measure them independently. Well, things aren't looking good. I hooked the meter up right on the connection points to the voice coil, and it's still measuring open, which could very well explain why somebody was trying to poke underneath this cover here to get at that coil to see what's up. Or maybe somebody jabbed it in there and broke the voice coil. Either way, it appears to be bad, so I got a few options. One, the field coil on this is good, so I can leave that hooked in place and put a second speaker in, a permanent magnet speaker just like this one, and just wire that in here. Two, I can try to go on somewhere like eBay and try to find a Philco Model 60 speaker, but these speakers don't pop up that often. I've been looking for one for my Philco 70 for over a year, and when they do show up, they cost more money than I really want to spend on this. Three, I can send this out and get it repaired. I already looked online, and it's looking like it may be around 50 bucks, plus maybe a little more for shipping back and forth. And finally, I can try to recone it myself, which is something I've kind of wanted to try for a while. But I've never done it before, and I know the basics of how you do it, but I might have a little trouble knowing what to order. You can buy kits, reconing kits for more modern speakers, and they give you what they call the spider, the voice coil, the cone, the foam surround, and all that, and you basically just rip this out and plop that in and do a little bit of gluing and soldering, and you're done. For something like this, it might be a little bit trickier. It's a shame because this cone is actually fine. I mean, it's in really, really good shape. And this crap, I could just pick off. I'm still not sure what the heck that's all about. But this is tough. So I really don't have anything to lose at this point. So what I'm going to do is carefully remove this, which is basically just a kind of a cloth cover. And let's see what's going on under there. After studying the speaker a bit more and comparing it to other speakers and thinking about it, I've concluded that this actually has been reconed by someone, and kind of rather badly too. Because I noticed that the cone is actually off-center. I counted the number of ridges before I ripped the cone out, and it was down by about half an inch off-center, which definitely wouldn't have been right. It turns out what the surround is, this appears to be scraps of another speaker cone, and underneath that there's no. Normally there would be some kind of flexible material around the outer rim. Nowadays they use foam. Back in the day they would have used leather sometimes. Finally, when I cut out the center section, there's a real good reason why the voice coil is measuring open. There is no voice coil. Normally there would be a coil of wire sitting down in here. That would, that's what moves in and out in the speaker. So I don't know what happened. Maybe somebody actually through this slit actually removed the voice coil. I'm not sure, but it's definitely needs to be repaired. So now that you can see it, here's the anatomy of a speaker. So behind here we would have, or we do have rather, the field coil. And then there's this thing in the middle. There's actually a threaded hole in the center there. To that would attach what they call a spider. A spider is something that's, well, it's anchored in the middle and then radiating around that. It's like a flexible mesh. These days it's like, looks like concentric rings of like corrugated material. Older ones sometimes they'll have like a metal like three-part thing coming off of it. Well, that's the anchor point for the cone. Its cone is attached around the outside, and it's anchored in the middle, and then there's that flexible part which lets the cone flex in and out, but also helps to kind of return it to a stable point when the voice coil is not energized. Down in this groove here is where the voice coil would sit, and it would be attached to the spider. And it's very important for the voice coil to be centered and not scrape at all. You may have found a speaker that sounds kind of scratchy when it's playing or buzzes. That's because it's probably become a bit warped and it's actually rubbing against this when it's playing. And then these are the two wires from the output transformer, and they would normally be attached via the fine wires to the actual voice coil, which is not here. So I certainly have two options now. Now, I said I have found places that sell kits, but they're for more modern speakers. I don't know what to order, so what I'm going to do, take a picture of this and post online. The Philco 60 is a well-known model, and I'm hoping that somebody can point me in the right direction to order the stuff I would need to do it myself. Otherwise, I will ship it off to somebody to have it reconed. In the meantime, I've got plenty of work to do on the rest of the radio. My workshop and realized I actually have a good Philco speaker that's almost an identical model, so you can see what it should look like. And here it is. This is the speaker, I think, from my Philco 3810 billet radio. And as you can see, the frame is exactly the same, even though they're probably about a good 5 years separating the manufacture dates on these two. So this is what the old cone, this is a real deal, this is what it would have looked like. So clearly this corrugated material was not right, so I was wrong on that. This was not the original cone. And here's that spider I was talking about. Whereas new ones are kind of concentric rings as like a polymer material. This is how they were back then. And there's that screw that goes right into that threaded hole there. Nah, too bad. I need to put this back in the Philco 3810, otherwise I could probably use this. I just thought you guys would like to see what one is supposed to look like. I was just rearranging my radio collection when I came across this Philco 3760 that I kind of forgot that I had. Got this off Craigslist a few years ago, really cheap. I think it's the last Cathedral model they made, and it's a pretty cheap one at that. The front is just kind of plywood with a faux finish. So there's what looks like wood grain, and then lace here is really just like printed on, like wallpaper, and it's deteriorating pretty badly. Inside, the chassis is in pretty rough shape too, but check out the speaker. It's just like that one I showed you from my Philco 3810, which sure looks like the one for the Philco 60. So the only question that remains is the output transformer and field coil compatible? I do want to restore this radio and get it working at some point, but it's pretty low down on my list of things to work on. So maybe I can pop this off, put it in the Philco 60, and in the meantime, see about getting that speaker repaired or do it myself. Well, I need to go out of town on business for a while, so I will leave you with this video and ponder my decision while I'm gone.